Hello. You guys look so much less scarier from in there. I'm going to start off by telling you guys a story. And it's nice and embarrassing, so you're allowed to laugh. Just last Thursday, I was leaving my sociology class. I put my headphones in, my head was down. I was avoiding all eye contact as I walked across campus. The introverts in the room will know where I'm coming from. And in my antisocial haste, I walked full force into a very stationary, very unmoving yield sign. I smacked right into it. And don't worry, it was daylight out, so literally everybody saw. And some of you may see this unfortunate incident as just another millennial absorbed in her technology, so much so that she becomes a mortifying sidewalk spectacle. What you guys don't know is that I had just been tagged in a meme. Now, to some of you, that means absolutely nothing. How many of you know what a meme is? Hands. Okay. So for those of you who aren't quite sure what the kids are up to these days, this is what I was tagged in at 12:34 p.m. A meme, such as this one, generally takes a funny image, facial expression, pop culture reference, and adds text or quote to it, and generally refers to experiences that we all have we don't really talk about because they're embarrassing or taboo. And so we revert to the online world to recognize the hilarity of these experiences. And on that fateful afternoon, with my imminent graduation looming and the encroaching fear of the real world impending, my feelings were most aptly captured with this young baseball player meeting the field with his face. Memes are everywhere, all over social media sites, liked by friends and strangers alike, and are often characterized as just another way for us to disconnect. And as millennials, we're often chastised for our online worlds. Understandably so. I sometimes get annoyed with my own peers who can't seem to put their phones down. But what if we looked at these things in a new way? What about them is so captivating? What has drawn an entire generation toward what seems to be just an idiosyncratic internet phenomenon? I'd argue that the importance of these memes come from their universality and their ability to touch on experiences and feelings we all have, we don't talk about because society has deemed them shameful. Oftentimes, the social media world is all about presenting our best selves, avoiding anything imperfect, flawed, or human in an effort to look our best. And that's what's great about memes. They allow you to call upon experiences we all have but we don't talk about because society has deemed them shameful. And one of these topics is mental illness, believe it or not, particularly anxiety and depression. Even if you have no personal experience with mental illness, you know someone who does, and you may not even know it. At least 25% of the US population will struggle with a mental illness at some point in their lives. That's 1 in 4. So take a look to your left, to your right, behind you, and right in front of you on this stage. I've struggled with major depressive disorder since I was 16 years old, and like so many others, have not only had to confront the challenges of having a mental illness, but the stigma that comes with it. And the stigma that breeds a feeling of being crazy. And that if I were to just think a little bit more positively, then it'll go away. And stigma comes in a lot of different forms. It can come from the media, it can come from everyday interactions. When I was 17, I decided to open up to somebody about my mental health challenge. It was the first person outside of my family, and at the time I felt so deeply sad. Despite my year in therapy, I felt as though these feelings were never gonna go away and nothing was gonna get better. But to everybody else, I was doing great. I was better than great. I was getting all A's in my classes, I was the yearbook editor, I was on track to go to a great college, and I had friends and family who truly loved and cared about me. But my mind was stuck in a thick fog, unable to internalize these external successes and privileges. And the best way I can describe it to you is that it felt as though I was in a hole, where I could see everyone, but no one could really see me. And in an effort to get better, I'd read that it was important to talk about, so I decided to share. And after sharing with them, they responded, "Well, you don't look sad, you're not crazy." And while I recognized this was meant to be a compliment, it really only perpetuated the idea that health is only valid and real if we see it with our naked eye. And even after trying to convince them of the realness of my illness, by telling them I was seeking professional help, they furrowed their brow and said, "Well, then why don't you feel better?" As much as I love to, it's not how it works. Because in the same way that an athlete has to go to practice each day to get better, I have to go to therapy and work to get better. And in the same way that an athlete gets injured, I experience setbacks in my own mental health training. Therapy will not fix me, no more than a few practices will make an elite athlete. And after this interaction, I withdrew, fearful that divulging any more of my feelings or thoughts would indeed convince them that I was crazy. And within this retreat, it is a perfect example of how stigma can be the nexus between choosing to get help or choosing to remain alone. And it comes from the lack of understanding that the sadness that comes from depression is deep, it's complex, and it's unique to each person experiencing it. And within this retreat, I had to find other ways to cope with the stigma I was beginning to internalize. And I found comedy, believe it or not. And the different types and tastes and mediums of comedy I used to cope with my depression over the last 6 years has evolved and changed. But what was most important was the laughter, because the laughter allowed to cut moments of intense negativity and remind me that joy and happiness is achievable, even in the darkest of places and in the darkest of moments. And additionally, it allowed me to even laugh at the absurdity of how my depression manifested itself, taking away from the power of the goblin that held on to my mind. And that's because even Neville couldn't be scared when Snape was wearing his grandmother's clothes. So what is it about laughter, about humor, that allows us to address our most visceral fears or the darkest parts of ourselves? I'd argue that laughter, and by extension comedy, makes us feel safe. And why does it make us feel safe? Because it makes us feel understood. When you laugh with someone, there's an understanding that transcends any sort of conversation, and you're enveloped in a sense of empathy and warmth that you really can't experience anywhere else. And that is the exact opposite of what it's like to be depressed. It's an intense feeling of isolation and the belief that no one understands you, no one believes me, and as such, no one cares about me. And then you don't care about yourself. And humor helps shatter this fallacy for me by showing me that the people I laugh with, things that I laugh at, matter, and the people who want to laugh with me care about me. Not laugh at me, I mean, they're sometimes the same thing, but. And humor and memes go hand in hand. They were designed with the sole purpose of making us laugh and to be shared with the people around us. Without knowing it, we've designed creative outlets to begin addressing issues that are all part of the human experience, but are just not something that we like to talk about. Additionally, don't worry, only everyone's looking at you. So what about them is such an integral part of our lives, especially as young people? So let me ask you, when someone tags you in a meme, sends you a picture that makes you smile, or an article that piques your curiosity, what does that say to you? To me, it says, I thought of you, I want you to know that, and this connection is important to me, because you're important to me. And memes allow us to connect on a variety of different tastes, interests, and topics. They could apply to your cinematic tastes, your political propensities, those days, weeks, months, or lifetimes when you feel overwhelmed, and lastly, when you're on deck to give your TEDx talk. And based on the laughter in the room, my evil plan has worked. And you can all see that we can connect to each one of these memes in some way, and we can all relate to each other. Maybe you found one funnier than the other, and that's okay, because we're all different. But we all laugh together, and there's a closeness that comes from that laughter and a sense of community. And in the same way that one of you may have found a dog in a burning room funnier than Mr. Potato Head yelling expletives, oftentimes the memes that make me laugh apply to my depression. A good friend of mine also struggles with anxiety and depression, and oftentimes our text threads are a series of memes sent back and forth, back and forth. No text necessary, No explanation required. Most recently, she sent me this. I have been struggling with my depression lately and feeling quite anxious and nervous with the prospect and privilege of speaking with you all here today. And she knew that. And the way she let me know that she's thinking of me and that she understands me and that she's there for me is by sending this. It's an implicit means of support and acceptance of my mental illness as something that's real, but also something that I can laugh about. Not laugh at, but laugh about. And it also opens the door to a conversation, because I establish a connection with somebody else, and that person says, you matter to me and I'm here for you, and we can talk about it if you want to. And I feel most validated because this is how my brain actually works. And that's where the hilarity of this meme comes from. Each day I'm confronted with my rationality and my anxiety and depression in this ironic car crash. And it's kind of funny. And being able to laugh at it does not lessen its seriousness or the intensity of what I'm feeling, but allows me a brief moment of relief from the inundation of negativity. And it also offers an understanding with another person when all I feel is alone. And while I also recognize that to some of you, you may not find this as funny as some of the other ones, and that's okay. Maybe your brain doesn't work like mine, kind of jealous, but it's okay. But memes have still shown us that we can connect on issues of mental illness, whether you have it or don't, by realizing that we all have symptoms of these illnesses, but the degree of it tends to vary. So how many of you have ever been sad? Okay, everyone should raise their hands. We've all been sad, guys. But this kind of sad? We've all been sad, and for some odd, irrational reason, we've all dealt with that sadness by listening to even sadder music. Doesn't make sense, but it's something that we do. But for those with depression, sadness comes with a more visceral intensity and stays for a prolonged period of time. And because it is distinctive in this way, it makes it difficult to talk about. Difficult for those who have it because they don't want to appear crazy or misunderstood. Difficult for those who don't because they don't really know what it is and may be afraid of saying the wrong thing. But that's the beauty of this meme. This meme got 54,973 likes on Instagram. 54,973 people related to this feeling on some level, and it instantly created a community and network of relatable things around a negative emotion, which is not something we generally rally around, And if we can recognize the connection and the unity that comes from this, we can change the perception that negative feelings are something to be ashamed of. And we can start having conversations that we aren't having by recognizing that we're all connected and we're all united and we can all be there for each other. And that's also because humor is one of the primary tools used to open us up in awkward, difficult, or challenging situations. For the students in the room, I invite you to think back to your orientation experience. If you're anything like me, you're probably anxious, nervous, crave some sort of social familiarity. What helped you in those moments? Maybe it was the orientation leader that made a cliche joke, or the icebreaker activity that made you quack like a duck. What did those moments do? They allowed you to laugh at something, laugh with someone, and maybe that's how you met your best friend. Or maybe you just got to be more comfortable being yourself. And that's because humor has this unique ability of leveling the playing field and allowing us to feel comfortable to confront things that are awkward, unknown, or challenging. And because humor can do this, we can utilize it every single day. And we can recognize that the depth of depressive feelings may be rare and severe. Sadness isn't. It's something we all feel, so why do we stigmatize those who feel it more frequently? The answer is we don't have to. We all have a role in reclaiming the narrative surrounding depression, anxiety, mental health. And you can recognize that by using your humor to just mitigate the intensity of a very serious topic for a brief moment, you can offer a window to a conversation. And memes are certainly no cure for depression, And no amount of laughter has ever made me not depressed. But we can use it as a tool to start having conversations we aren't having for those on both sides, and so that for people who don't feel validated to begin feeling validated. So use your words, use your humor, use your empathy, continue to hit like, continue to share, continue to tag your friends in those memes, but remember that each of those moments go beyond a fleeting click or a like, that you have the power to take control of those moments and start having conversations we aren't having. And maybe you'll be the one to pull somebody out of their thick fog or their hole. And you have the power to do that every time you unlock your phone. Maybe just avoid walking into any polls. Thank you.